Lord Mandelson, still cashing in after the Epstein scandal. Right. So imagine getting the sack from your job for having dodgy connections, and then still getting paid six figures. Sounds mental, doesn't it? Well, welcome to British politics, where apparently getting fired doesn't mean you stop getting paid. Lord Peter Mandelson, the man who was supposed to be Britain's ambassador to the United States, got the boot last month after his cozy relationship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein came to light. But here's the kicker. He's reportedly still on the Foreign Office payroll, raking in up to £174,000 a year. Yes, you heard that right. Sacked, disgraced, but still getting paid. And anti-Labour parties? They're absolutely erupting over this. Buckle up, because this story is an absolute rollercoaster of political scandal, taxpayer money, and the kind of hypocrisy that makes your blood boil. So who exactly is Lord Mandelson? Well, if you're not familiar, he's basically Labour royalty, a political heavyweight who's been knocking about Westminster for decades. He has held some pretty serious positions: Northern Ireland Secretary, Business Secretary, European Commissioner, you name it, he's done it. The man's practically a walking encyclopedia of political power. Some call him the Prince of Darkness. Others call him a master strategist. Love him or hate him, Mandelson knows how to play the game. And earlier this year, he was handed one of the plushest gigs in government, ambassador to the United States. Dream job, right? Rubbing shoulders with American politicians, representing Britain on the world stage, living in a swanky Washington residence. Proper cushion number. But then, as they say, the past is a funny way of catching up with you. September rolled around, and things went absolutely sideways. Emails emerged, old emails, but bloody damning ones, showing that Mandelson had a far closer relationship with Jeffrey Epstein than anyone had previously known. We're talking about emails where Mandelson told Epstein to fight for early release right before the financier was sentenced to 18 months in prison for soliciting prostitution from a minor. Let that sink in for a second. A British peer, a Labour grandee, someone who was supposed to represent our country, telling a convicted sex offender to fight for early release. But it gets worse. Another email showed Mandelson saying, "I think the world of you" to Epstein the day before he began his prison sentence in June 2008. The day before. While Epstein was heading to prison for crimes against children, Mandelson was sending him messages of support. Absolutely wild. Now, when these emails came out, the reaction was predictably explosive. The media went into overdrive, opposition parties started sharpening their knives, and the government, well, they had no choice but to act. Mandelson was swiftly axed from the role. And to be fair, what else could they do? You can't have someone representing Britain on the world stage when they've been caught cozying up to a convicted paedophile. It's political suicide. The optics are catastrophic. So Mandelson packed his bags, left his official residence in Washington on September 11th, and headed back to the UK. He has since been spotted in Wiltshire, stepping out of a black Land Rover, keeping a low profile, probably wondering how it all went so spectacularly wrong. But here's where the stories shift from scandalous to absolutely infuriating. According to the Telegraph, despite being sacked, Mandelson is still on the Foreign Office payroll. Why? Because he didn't resign, he was fired. And apparently, that means he might be entitled to compensation for the remainder of his fixed-term contract. The contract in question? A 4-year deal. So depending on how the fine print reads, Mandelson could be sitting pretty, collecting a 6-figure salary for doing absolutely nothing. No ambassadorial duties, no diplomatic meetings, no representing Britain abroad. Just pure, unadulterated taxpayer-funded downtime. It's the kind of thing that makes ordinary working people want to scream into the void. Now, let's talk numbers for a second. Ambassadors earn serious money. We're talking up to £174,000 a year. That's more than what most people make in 5 years. And Mandelson, despite the scandal, despite the sacking, despite the public outrage, could still be entitled to that cash because of how his contract was structured. Meanwhile, nurses are striking for better pay. Teachers are buying classroom supplies out of their own pockets, and ordinary families are choosing between heating and eating. But Lord Mandelson, he might still be getting paid nearly £175,000 for a job he no longer has. The disconnect is staggering. Opposition parties, unsurprisingly, have gone absolutely ballistic over this revelation. Anti-Labour voices are having an absolute field day, calling it a disgrace, a waste of taxpayer money, and yet another example of Labour's hypocrisy. Conservative MPs are demanding answers. Reform UK is calling it corruption, and even some Labour backbenchers are privately furious. And honestly, can you blame them? The optics are absolutely dreadful. Labour, the party that loves to bang on about fairness, accountability, and standing up for working people, is now caught up in a scandal where one of their own is potentially getting paid six figures for doing sweet FA. It's a PR nightmare wrapped in a political disaster tied up with a bow of public fury. And what about Keir Starmer in all of this? Well, Sir Keir, to his credit, has tried to distance himself from Mandelson as quickly as humanly possible. Last week, he pretty much said that Mandelson will never get another government job again. It's a bold statement, but let's be real, it's also pure damage control. Starmer had initially defended Mandelson when he was appointed, insisting that he'd gone through a proper vetting process and had successfully built a relationship with Donald Trump's White House. Starmer talked about Mandelson's experience, his diplomatic skills, his ability to navigate complex political relationships. But once those emails surfaced, Starmer had no choice but to throw Mandelson under the bus. Politically, it was the only move. Keep him close, and Labour's credibility goes down the toilet. Stephen Doughty, a Foreign Office minister, told MPs last month that the information about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein wasn't known when he was appointed. According to Doughty, the emails revealed that the depth and extent of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment. In other words, they didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went. But that raises some seriously uncomfortable questions. How did this slip through the cracks? How did someone with such close ties to Epstein end up in one of the most important diplomatic roles in the country? Either the vetting process is seriously flawed, or someone wasn't asking the right questions. Neither option is particularly reassuring. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.